Daring Abroad in association with Equity PayPal.
He began his career here at KBC in 1985 as a radio newscaster on voluntary basis, and at that time he was still in college, not studying journalism but education. Little did he know that he was planting a seed that would later take him to London to become the first African head of the BBC African News and Current Affairs Service. Today, on our returnees edition of Daring Abroad, we bring you the story of Joseph Warungu, who is now a media and communication consultant.
I was born in Dumberi, which is a village in Kiambu County, and I attended just 1 year of Dumberi Primary School, and then I transferred to Starehe Boys Center. And Starehe Boys Center, I was there from Standard 1 all the way up to A-level. For 13 years, I was in one school. And then I'd always wanted to be a broadcaster, but unfortunately I couldn't. There was only one college at that time, Kenya Institute of Mass Communication, and it was really difficult to get in. So I decided to detour a little bit and went into teaching. So I went to Kisii College. I trained as a teacher, English and Kiswahili teacher. So even when I was in college, I was doing part-time news reading and presenting at KBC.
Upon completion of his training as a teacher, his efforts to get a job at KBC bore no fruit.
I remember doing quite a number of voice tests and screen tests, and every time I knew I had done well, but they would say, oh, you know, we've lost your tape, or the guy who reviews, or the committee, or whatever it is not there, so come back another time. And that journey went on for, for so long.
So Warungu decided to continue offering his services for free to the national broadcaster alongside his teaching job.
There had been a new director who came in, Cornelius Nyamboki, who was formerly head of the Presidential Press Unit. He's the one who actually opened the door for me, because I went to see him with all the letters that I had received from KBC, not rejection letters, but, oh, come this day, your tape is missing, do another one. And he called the head of radio and said, listen, test this young man. If he's got anything to offer, we'll take him on, especially since he says he wants to do it without any payment. So I passed my TV screen test. But they said I looked too young for TV, so they said, you'd better start off in radio. I made a bit of noise, but actually it was a blessing in disguise. My advice to any journalist, radio is a place to start. It teaches you a lot of discipline.
Warungu was determined to cling onto the two jobs, but he knew where his passion belonged.
When I was posted to Nyeri, to a school called Kereti High School, I used to finish my last class on a Friday afternoon by 3 p.m. I'm on a matatu heading back to Nairobi. By that evening, I would be reading the radio news, and then all through the weekend. My last bulletin would be the 4 p.m. on Sunday, catch another matatu off to Nyeri to teach for a week. And I did that for almost 2 years, until I relocated closer to Nairobi, continuing doing part-time.
Then came the Kenya Television Network, KTN, in 1990.
KTN was the first commercial privately owned TV station in Kenya. The only station to work with was KBC. So if KBC did not like you, or you didn't manage to get in, that was the end. There was no other radio station, no other TV station. So when KTN came along, they were looking for some of the best people that they could recruit as reporters and anchors. And I was one of the pioneer reporters and anchors. Myself, people like Catherine Kasabuli, Kathleen Openda, Njoroge Maura, Fayaz Kuresh, that's the old school sort of broadcast team. What I was earning as a teacher, I think my salary was about 1,400 Kenya shillings per month. This was by 1989. And then KTN offers you a salary of 10,000 shillings. I thought I'd lost my mind. This was like like a multi-billionaire, I've won the lottery.
Warungu says KTN pioneered journalism as it is today in the Kenyan television industry.
I remember those early days, people used to rush home to catch the 9 p.m. primetime bulletin on KTN because we broke from the trend. We broke from what the state, broadcaster would do. We had different treatment to our stories.
This is Got Alila, where the remains of Dr. Ouko discovered mid-February this year.
He would eventually traverse Africa thanks to being attached to the then President Daniel Arap Moi's trips.
The first time I'd ever left the country, accompanying President Moi to Zambia, to the AU conference or summit in Abuja, Nigeria, to Ethiopia, to Rwanda in the early days. And that gave me a taste and a flair for reporting Africa.
Joseph Warungu reporting for KTN in Abuja, Nigeria.
Then an opportunity at the British Broadcasting Corporation BBC came knocking in 1992.
BBC advertised for the job of a producer, presenter with the BBC Swahili service. We were more than 50 people at the British Council, just near the Kenya National Theatre here in Nairobi, writing a serious exam. This job was advertised across East Africa and in Europe as well, in the UK. I was the only one at that time who was successful from this part of the world. 4 years after working the Swahili service, I was given a new contract. So I now became a breakfast show presenter on Network Africa in English, now no longer part of the Swahili service.
Eventually, in the year 2000, Warungu was promoted to become the BBC bureau chief for East Africa in Nairobi.
I had a really good time because then you have the experience of working abroad and you bring it back here.
After 2 years, the editor who recruited Warungu into the BBC English service, Robin White, left BBC and his job was advertised.
And I applied, fought through the process, and I was successful. So I was appointed, as the editor of the BBC's African News and Current Affairs department, responsible for Focus on Africa and Network Africa, the breakfast show. This was in 2003.
This meant Warungu had to relocate back to the UK.
So I was responsible for recruiting people into the BBC, training, establishing relationships with our partners around Africa, places like Ghana, Nigeria, etc. Then that one now elevated me to a completely different level. Suddenly, now you're being invited to a lot of the African embassies. They know you by name, they know your role. So in that position, which is a very influential position and a very privileged one, I must say, I got to experience the BBC and even living abroad in a very different context. You'd attend some very high level. I was once called to the Downing Street by Prime Minister Tony Blair, alongside other two leading journalists from other places, to help when he was preparing his new strategy for Africa, and we were there to help with some of the brainstorm and experiences.
After 10 years as the editor of the BBC African News and Current Affairs service, he felt it was time to hang the boots.
I decided, okay, I think I've experienced what there is to experience here. I've amassed all this experience, and I was missing home. My children are now grown, so I felt, I think I want to go back. And I was very clear what I wanted to do. I wanted to come back from abroad and share what I've learned. So the show has come a long way.
The former high school teacher says while at the BBC, he did very little television reporting. The bulk of his duties were on radio, with the managerial position taking away what he had passion for.
I just felt I was losing touch with the real world of reporting. And I suppose it happens to a lot of people. When the higher you go, you become less of a journalist and more as a newsroom manager. And I was kind of missing the fun of being in the field. And BBC said, no, we want you to sit here, run rotas and reporters and move people around, and which was fun, which was good to do and important to do. But I also felt I have a contribution to make as a journalist.
So he came back to his motherland. That was in 2011.
I landed in Kenya with an idea of what I wanted to do, but no job. And what I struggled with was the title was gone. We Africans, we love our titles. I was the editor of the BBC's African News and Current Affairs based in London. The moment you just say that title in full, even prison doors will open. And then suddenly now you're back. You're just a plain Joseph Warungu who used to work with the BBC. So I struggled with that a little bit. And I remember sticking onto the BBC name for as long as I could. And people saying, Guy, you left BBC 5 years ago. You're still calling yourself former. Why don't you call yourself something else?
Warungu began a whole new journey of operating as an independent journalist, and his first engagement was a media training job with the International Center for Journalists.
So for 3 years, I became, a night fellow with the ICFJ, and that kept me busy. And as soon as I finished that, I now started establishing my production house.
He at the same time taught broadcast journalism at the University of Nairobi for 4 years. Not to forget yet another engagement with BBC as a consultant.
And so for 3 years, I was back on the screen on KBC, initially on KTN and then on KBC presenting the Sema Kenya.
Warungu is known for a media training project titled Top Story.
I thought I could give something back. So I started a practical mentorship program where we would bring in the best journalists from all these universities, put them through a competition, you know, and in the process give them skills. They get an opportunity to work very closely with established professionals. We invited yourself, Alex, on the show once as a judge. Actually, on our first, that was our first season ever. And we've gone on to bring in other people, John Namo, Janet Mbogo, and other people. So it's been a great experience.
And guess what? He's just returned from Ghana after a 1-year media training job.
I was approached by one of the oldest media house in Ghana, which is called Media General. They're the owners of TV3, Network, and 4 other radio stations. And they wanted me to come and help them. As I'm speaking to you, I'm booked to go to Zambia to do some training on development journalism for 2 weeks, and to spend another 2 weeks in Zimbabwe.
So how exactly has the diaspora changed Warungu?
The thing that London impacted me was that the world is bigger than my village in Dumberi. So there are things that we obsess about, and you find you need the bigger picture. So some of the issues I would suffer from as a Kenyan in my own village, I see them as my own local issues, which are very pressing. But actually sometimes the factors that contribute to that are way into somewhere in Brazil or wherever it is. So just getting a global view of things.
And here is Warungu's take on working abroad.
I would use myself as an example. This is not a brain drain. This is actually a brain return. So I have come back richer. The bulk of what I know is consumed here in Kenya.
PayPal is a faster, safer way to make and receive online payments. With the Equity Bank's PayPal withdrawal service, you can access funds received from anywhere around the globe. Even better, you can now withdraw funds from your PayPal account to your Equity Bank account at a reduced rate of as little as 1%. Visit Equity's self-service portal to link your PayPal account to your Equity Bank account today.